Hello and welcome to the Providence College Podcast. I'm your host, Liz Kay, and I'm joined by producer Chris Judge of the class of 2005. Here at the Providence College Podcast, we bring you interesting stories from the Fryer family. This week, we're talking with Sister Larraine Lauter, one of 6 people who received honorary degrees at PC's Commencement. Sister Larraine has done many things in her 40 years as an Ursuline sister of Mount St. Joseph. She's been a teacher, pastoral minister, environmentalist, fundraiser, advocate for migrant farm workers, artist, and musician. Her focus today is her Kentucky-based organization, Water with Blessings, which has distributed more than 96,000 water filters to hundreds of thousands of families in 47 countries around the world. Sister Larraine, thank you so much for joining us, and congratulations on your honorary degree.
Thank you. It's great to talk with you.
Can you tell us a little about the origins of Water with Blessings? What were the problems you were hoping to solve?
Well, the obvious problem is water kills children, and we began, myself and a couple of guys, Arnie LeMay and Jim Burris, were all part of a core of a team that was doing medical missions in Honduras. And one day, Arnie, who's an engineer, looked at the line of patients and said, you know, half of this line would go away if we had clean water in this neighborhood. And we just went for that. We just decided to go for that. And the first thing we tried was kind of the standard approach, I think, that occurs to the North American mind. We're all about economy of scale and being efficient. And so we researched, and Arnie really did, and found a nice apparatus that would produce 10,000 gallons of clean water a day that you would put into a church, operates off a car battery. And we put that in, brought it back in 2007, I think. And it lasted about a week. It lasted about a week. And that's, as we learned later, projects like that are shared, among a community in that way generally last less than a year. The World Health Organization says there's a 90% failure rate for large-scale systems, large-scale water interventions. So we learned that, unfortunately, the hard way, and then we started talking about what would work. We wanted to find something that we could put into the hands of mothers. We felt that mothers would be more likely to sustain a solution that would keep their children alive and healthy. And so we looked around, and within a few more months, we had come across the Sawyer filter. So we had researched there's a whole wide scope of solutions out there in the whole family of what's called the household water treatment and storage approach, which is what the World Health Organization advocates for, is to do HWTS. It's called HWTS approach or models. So looking at everything in that, there's sand filters, there's all kinds of things people do with colloidal silver, there's just a wide variety of things people do to apply chlorine, etc. And nothing really came up to the very high standard that we were looking for. Those are all good solutions in their own way, but they're limited in terms of the actual percentage and reliability, the actual percentage of eradicating cholera or taking cholera or any kind of bacteria out of the water. So when we did that research, and eventually we came across the Sawyer filter, we were thrilled to learn that it was EPA certified to remove 99.99999% of all, so sorry about that, 99999% of all bacteria, and that would be as high as we could possibly hope for in terms of clean water for children. And also in that meantime, we had come across a variety of situations that really helped us to understand children under 5. Actually, a couple of years before that, I had been in a village just visiting, just kind of for the experience, didn't really know what I was doing. And the priest said to me as we were walking around, that family over there was going to host you for supper tonight, but their 2-year-old daughter just died of dirty water. And I was so stunned I didn't even know how to respond appropriately. Because for me, those kinds of issues, those are issues that were the issues of my great-grandparents' generation in Mississippi. Their children died like flies. Their, siblings had died like flies, but it was, before clean water was available here in the U.S. and widely accessible. And so it really took a bit for me to wrap my head around. That's not the reality in the rest of the world. I needed that personal experience. And then back up to 2006 and 2007, I needed to be with other people who had more of a sense of what was possible. And so the guys were really key to all of this.
So could you tell us more about the water filter that you're using and how you're putting it into the hands of the women in these communities? Sure.
Well, really, before I get to that, I want to just add one more piece that I should have added when we talk about the origins, and this has to do with how we get it into the hands of the mothers. By the time we'd had a really big failure with the one system that lasted a week, installed in a church, everybody was going to share, and that just did not work the way we thought it would. When we found the Sawyer filters, we went back to a group of lay people in the church and said, okay, we have 10 of these. And they were Sawyer 0.1 filters. I'll tell you more about them. And so we only have 10. We are looking at thousands of families here. How do we do this in a way that doesn't destroy community, disrupt the fabric of this community here, and has the most impact? And it was the local people themselves. And this is what is really key in designing good programming. It's to tap into the wisdom of the people who have their own lived reality. And it was those local leaders who said, we're going to draw names and we're going to share. Whoever is chosen will have to agree already that they will share with others. And we will use, when they draw names, they use what they call the innocent hand, la mano inocente, which means a child who is too small to be able to read is chosen to do the drawing after a prayer. And so everyone trusts that, and you don't have the deep divisions that can tear at a community's fabric when you just go in and in some arbitrary way allow someone to decide who's going to receive a benefit. So the filter itself that we have been working with now for over 10 years is a Sawyer 0.1 filter. It's a hollow fiber membrane 0.1 absolute filter, which means that inside the filter are tiny straws bundled and looped over that are made of a membrane that has pores of 0.1 microns. And that is, almost nothing can pass through that, nothing biological. That's, I think 1/100th the width of a human hair. And that has proven very, very reliable, as I said. Those filters are not only EPA certified, they are triple tested in the process of their manufacturing, and we have had, nothing but good reports from those about those filters. So we've continued to use them. They work by gravity, so there's no electricity necessary. They hang from a tube off of a bucket. You drill a hole at the bottom on the side, but toward the bottom of a bucket, and then it hangs down from a tube, and gravity pulls that water through the filter. When you turn it off, quote, to turn off the gravity, you just hook the filter back up to the edge of the bucket. And they are lifetime guaranteed by the manufacturer. We have filters that have been out there for more than 10 years in the field, and even to get 10 years is remarkable. The challenge is to take a product like that and marry it up to a program that will really support it and really ensure that the potential of that product is going to do what it can do. So we knew the filters, they can filter over 450, I think, gallons in 24 hours. That's a lot of water. So we knew they should be able to serve more than one family. And we also knew that they have this lifetime guarantee. We should be able to get at least to get multiple years out of them, but that would take really careful training and a program model that would encourage the women to be conscientious and focused and care well for the filter. So I wrote up the program for training. We did that in the form of, it's like a flip booklet that just is PowerPoint slides printed, and quickly learned that the best people to teach that were actually the local women themselves of those neighborhoods. So what we do is, in whatever language, this basic training is still in the same format, and it has a lot of pictures. It has a lot of points built into it for discussion and activity and such. It's about a 3.5-hour process. And the teachers stand in front, show the pictures, read the page, and lead the women through the various aspects of the training. And it works well in every language. And the model works well in every place we've been, and we're in 47 countries. It turns out mother culture is the same everywhere. And so that makes our one program work across many different other kinds of cultures.
It seems like this is phenomenal results, given all the work that's happening all over the world to try to help to ensure water resources and protect water resources for people. I'm curious what sorts of challenges you've encountered with the training or rolling them out to different communities.
Well, there are a couple of kinds of challenges. One is that depending on the situation, sometimes our teams are really challenged, and our teams are teams in those countries. They may be challenged just by the difficulty of transportation. They may walk or ride motorcycles for hours. We had a team that just finished a key area of Haiti called Cornillon last week. And the last 2 weeks, they had to hike 10 or more hours up into the mountains. They sent us video of themselves in ankle-deep mud, going through a road that was just wall-to-wall, ankle-deep mud. It was really, really difficult for them. So they just face, as they try to get to people who are very remote, which is a key part of our model, not to just get to people that you can get to easily, then they face just a lot of personal, it's wear and tear on them. And the other challenge is sometimes we come up against the challenge locally in that often nonprofits come into a community and they just kind of assume that whoever is there locally as leader will be someone that they can trust to make the decisions, to pick out the recipients, whether that be a religious leader or an elected leader or just someone who's proclaimed they're the leader. And there are a lot of dynamics around all that. It's one reason that large-scale systems almost always fail, because when you bring a large-scale system into a community where you're not going to yourself run it 24 hours a day for 365 days a year, you are bringing someone a power tool, and it's probably not the person that you would have picked to have the power. You don't know what's going to happen when you leave, and you don't know the true nature of how that power came to be and how it's exercised. So this really leads me to one of the key principles of Catholic social teaching is a principle called subsidiarity. And it's difficult to pull off, and people often don't understand it. But subsidiarity means that you're going to take the power for the solution, whatever you're trying to do, to the very lowest possible level. there's no one lower than the mother of young children. She is usually truly out of sight, especially if she doesn't have a husband or for some reason has been abandoned or whatever. There's no one considered less likely to be worthy of any kind of power in a community, and that's who we go for because they're the ones who have the children. And so we're taking these women who are powerless and unknown and unnamed, and we are putting the solution into their hands. Gaudium et Spes, which is the Constitution on the Church in the Modern World, it's been a little over 50 years now that it was promulgated, and it has this really incredible piece of wisdom in there, and it talks about that, and this again is over 50 years ago, the bishops foresee that humanity is going to be more and more drawn to or lured by technology as the source of solutions. And the bishops teach us that the solutions that are going to be effective have to be human solutions, and that we have to look for the kind of solutions that will allow people to rise to their destiny. That's a quote from the document itself. People will rise to their destiny. It's very inspirational, and it's very true. It's very true. If you don't do a solution that is primarily, first and foremost, a human solution, then your technology will fail. Technology alone cannot answer these problems. So we have seen this same filter, which is I really consider it the most important product on the planet. This same filter given out of the back of a truck to a line of guys who are pushing each other out of the way. And that filter will do nothing. It will be very, very unlikely that those filters will end up turning into living children. We have come across people who had received these filters from, just some kind of wide distribution by a large organization and just given out literally as part of a group of things in a bucket, and they would have no idea what it was or what to do with it. And, we've actually gathered people in some areas and say, okay, you've got one of these filters, let us teach you about this filter. So it's actually a very widely accepted now piece of technology, and it's very powerful, and it's great. Like I said, I think it's the most important product on the planet. But it has to be put into the hands of a mother. I firmly believe this, that it's going to be most likely to succeed if it's put into the hands of a mother who is willing to share with others.
It definitely sounds like you cannot discount the human element.
No. And that's the wisdom of Catholic social teaching in that kind of setting, like illustrated right there.
Your organization is working on a really ambitious project in Haiti. Can you tell us about the mission there?
I really appreciate that you asked about that. So I was referring to that a few minutes ago about Cornillon. So the ambitious, bold, crazy project is to eradicate cholera in Haiti. Let's start with cholera came back to Haiti in 2010 after the earthquake. The UN, unfortunately, accidentally, of course, reintroduced cholera to Haiti with one sick soldier from Nepal, and that spread rapidly. It's estimated at minimum 12,000 people have died of cholera since then. Cholera is a medieval-type beast of a disease. It kills people if they're sufficiently weakened. They die within 6 hours, 8 hours. People, feel good one moment, and the next moment they realize they're getting ill, and they're hours from any kind of intervention, and they die. And so that 12,000 does not include many, many people that died unknown in very remote places. So we knew that cholera is a waterborne disease, and that the approaches that had been taken to eradicating cholera had primarily been through vaccinations and trying to upgrade sanitation. And while these are both really great things, cholera vaccines usually have about a 6-month life of effectiveness. If you're lucky, 2 years. And if you've ever been to Haiti, just trying to think about rotating into, through these villages that you had to walk 10 hours to get to, it's really difficult to pull off a countrywide campaign like that. People have definitely tried. And sanitation issues it's just really difficult to pull that off consistently as well, building good sanitation, access, and such. The other thing is there's a lot of distribution of chlorine, and chlorine has a couple of Achilles heels. One is that you have to, actually 3 I can think of. One is that you have to keep providing it, and again, you've got people living, miles and miles away. And you have to, if you use chlorine in water that has certain pH differences or certain pH levels, it can actually, the chlorine will no longer be as effective. And you have to put the chlorine in and wait a certain amount of time. And again, and put it into the right dosage level and everything. So it's a more complex solution than people think, and it's a less sustainable solution than people think. Chlorine is just not readily available, as we would assume it is. So all that to say, some incredible, I think it's like $914 million have been spent trying to eradicate cholera in Haiti. Those numbers fluctuate, but people throw that kind of number around. And honestly, Haiti, cholera has become big business in a way in Haiti. So a lot of people have tried very, very hard, but it comes back around every rainy season. The rain kind of, loosens up whatever was dormant in the soil, and it complicates the sanitation arrangements and such, and cholera comes back with the rain every time. So what we decided we could do is apply our model in a very intense way. And instead of just kind of running here and there in Haiti, wherever people asked us, and we had some funding for that, we would draw into a very strategic plan and focus ourselves on one commune, it's called, which is like a communal area. It's really like a small county. Think of that, like a county with a county seat. They're usually named after their county seat. So we would strategically look at that area, which we call footprint in our model. We would research to find out the number of households in that area, and we would go for 25% of those households having mothers serving as water women. So, of course, strategically spread out across all the little villages. So then we have to break down every village, how many households here. And pick out training sites. We work with local people that we're compensating pretty modestly, actually, to help us temporarily coordinate all this, get the numbers, make sure people are alerted. And then women start coming in for trainings. And we tell them that you are going to be the next heroes of Haiti. Haitians are very proud that they successfully fought a revolution of slaves against their overlords, that they're the only country to be able to claim that they liberated themselves from slavery. And so this concept of being a hero in their culture is not something that's just taken lightly. So we actually give the women in Haiti a sign to put on their doors that says, "A hero water woman lives here." And they understand when they accept that sign and when they accept the training and they're registered on with GIS registration, which means we can map where they are, get their names, household numbers, all that, get all that data, then they understand when they've accepted that sign that everyone else in the village has the right to come to them and ask them to filter water for them. So it takes that role of being the water woman up to a new level, but it's a life and death situation, even more than it is just simply when we're looking at all the normal contaminants that you run into with contaminated water. And they step up to it. So we started in an area called Verets, which is a little northwest of Port-au-Prince, and put in close to 4,000 water women there, trained. We always count water women, not filters, so we recruited and trained about 4,000 there, a little under that, and then moved down to O.S.U, which is on the large southern peninsula, like the north edge of that, and trained over 7,000 there, really kind of took on 2 communes at once, I think. Cornillon had a major outbreak. They lost, I think, 23 people in July and August and September. A lot of children died there. And so we started up on Cornillon while we were still in the middle of working on O.S.U. So that's 3 footprints. We just finished Cornillon. So we have 3 pretty good-sized areas of Haiti that are completely cholera-free. So Verets, we finished Verets last May, not this past May, the May of 2018, and some of those villages had actually, or those areas of that section had actually been, completed months before that. So there are areas of Haiti that have been cholera-free now for 18, 19 months, and continue to report that. Their cholera clinics are closed. There's no cholera outbreak. It's all around them, but there's no cholera there. And we're getting the same results from O.S.U and Cornillon. And that's backed up by doctors that work with us, officials that have helped to facilitate this. Now we're on to an area called Bardera, which is right on the ocean, like the north edge of that southern peninsula. Incredibly remote, though, very difficult to get to. We have to actually send our team out there in skiffs, and it's very worrisome to me. But these people, no one, they say, has ever been to their villages to bring them any kind of assistance at all. But cholera gets everywhere. So people really step up to the program. The women do not have to be persuaded. That's part of why we have to do the drawing, the lottery, is that it's it's the only way to make it fair. We'll have, 150 women show up for 45 filters. And somehow we have to make a choice. But we also talk with them about, we're going to leave this choice up to God. This is a calling by God. It doesn't matter what religion you practice or what faith, but God calls us, and God knows the heart, and we're going to let God make that choice. And that seems to work very well.
These are astounding numbers and astounding success, considering, as you said, all of the money that has been spent and poured into the country to try to tackle this huge problem. And when you talk about all the children who are affected, this is like a generation of kids.
Yes, it is. And it's a generation of children who are being orphaned. It's already very, very hard to grow up as a child in Haiti. And I'm so impressed by the Haitian people. They are incredibly intelligent and wise. You have to be to survive that kind of poverty and for your children to survive. It might not look like much to you and me, but, to survive in and of itself just, requires a daily grit that I don't think I can imagine myself. And they are, when they believe that they can trust something and someone, they have been, they are very aware that their suffering has for some time now been a source of profit for other people. There's a lot of profit built into the nonprofit world, and they read the ProPublica reports and all that. They're aware of that now. People have smartphones, people see things on the news, word gets around. They understand that their suffering has been lucrative for others, and it's difficult to gain trust. It really is. But we have an all-Haitian team. We have a Haitian country coordinator here in the U.S., in Kentucky, who is amazing. And we have kind of his counterpart who works directly under him in the country. And I want them to look around and see Haitians. In fact, when we finished Veretz, they wanted to have a big celebration. And I think they were disappointed that I would not come. And part of that was that it would cost that's a lot of money that could have been a lot more filters. I wasn't going to do that. But I said, if I show up, the immediate focus will be this white person's work came in, rescued us. And we didn't rescue them. They did this themselves. Right. We gave them a real basic, simple tool. And from that point forward, it's day after day after day, keep my eye on, I will do this consistently. Well, so they're the heroes.
It's just fantastic that we were able to celebrate your work at Peace's commencement this year, and it really parallels the work of another honorary degree recipient, Dr. Steve Mecca.
Yes.
Who worked quite a bit on sanitation, but definitely parallels and worked hand in hand. And with hope, you mentioned that sanitation work has happened in Haiti in the past, but hopefully with your organizations working on the root cause, maybe some of those sanitation projects will take hold and do the good work that they're intended to do. But that's not the only thing.
Absolutely.
That's not the only thing you were celebrating this year, because it's your 40th Jubilee of your anniversary of becoming an Ursuline. Can you tell us about the Ursulines and their mission?
Okay. The Ursuline, we say Ursuline in Kentucky, but we're the only ones who do, I think. Maybe Ohio says that, but others say Ursuline. I'll try to remember that. The Ursulines were founded by St. Angela Merici in the 16th century, early 16th century, 1535. And she had a unique vision that was really kind of swept under the rug even as Ursuline spread, and has only recently, since the Vatican II, been kind of brought back into the light. So her vision was for women who were in the world as contemplatives, and then serving in whatever way came out of that contemplative life that they lived. She herself was a Third Order Franciscan, and the charism is very Franciscan in many ways. But she did not recruit these women, these young girls, to be Franciscans. And, at that point, in northern Italy, this was in Brescia, northern Italy, it was considered that girls, if anyone was going to care about them, they were either going to be married or they were going to be put into convents. And she lived her entire life outside of those boundaries and knew it was possible, and led a very holy life, and a life that was recognized by others as being holy and being of value. And she wanted to share that with others. And she gained church approval for her rule. This was around the time, by the point that she died in 1545, we've got the Counter-Reformation dynamics really heating up. And part of that was to kind of homogenize all religious congregations of women especially into one, more standardized kind of, quite frankly, more controllable kind of structure. And so there had been a lot of pushback. They did not live in convents, and they did not wear habits. And so the church essentially said, you're going to live in convents, you're going to be nuns like other nuns, you're going to wear habits, and you're going to teach little girls. So this myth kind of rose up that Angela Merici started the Ursuline Sisters to teach girls, and that it was the first apostolic order. I think it was actually much more akin to the Beguine movement, and that swept mostly across northern Europe, but did reach down into northern Italy and southern France, which was independent women, or organizing among themselves, but leading lives dedicated to God and to God's people. But as I said, they were kind of homogenized or standardized into convents, put under the rule of St. Augustine, and told that you have one mission, which is to teach. So, in the Vatican II work with religious congregations, we were given the mandate to look at our roots. I think the bishops wisely saw that it was possible many things of value had been lost in the standardization, and looking at the original charisms. And when Ursulines began looking at their original charisms, they were pretty surprised. We're still, unfolding where that's going. So we're really still in a period of transition, I think, of figuring out where that's going as religious life changes and shifts in the United States, especially, and then in the Western world.
So how did you first encounter the Ursulines? And you certainly joined this community at a pretty young age. How did you make that decision?
I did. Well, that was 40 years ago, so more people made those decisions. Let's see. I was taught by this particular group of Ursulines here in Kentucky in my last years of grade school. And at that point, our congregation had a boarding school, a small boarding school in western Kentucky, and the sisters felt it would be a good spot for me. I was actually fairly shy and quite rebellious in many ways. And I had a lot of responsibilities. With my siblings and such. My mother had been ill for a number of years, and I had not done so well in grade school, let's put it that way. But anyway, they felt like that would be a good setting and persuaded my parents, and I was able to get a scholarship. And I was able to work my way through, for like my room and board and such, which kept me out of trouble, which I was prone to. And I think all my life been intrigued for some reason by religious life, and I would say for whatever reason at a young age I kind of fell in love with God. But I thought religious life was something I might get out of my system, so I decided I would give it a try. I remember my high school principal was not in favor of this. And it's just never gotten out of my system.
Sister, I don't want to neglect something. You've done so many things in your life. I wondered if you could tell us a little bit about some of your favorite works when you've been wearing other hats instead of nonprofit leader. But
sure.
What are some of your favorite art projects and expressions?
Well, I really never expected to find myself doing this. I tell God frequently, this was not my plan, right? So, you got to step up to this. But I thought I would be an art teacher all my life, and I was quite happy doing that. Taught at the cathedral in Owensboro and such. And in that time, I also did a lot of work with churches, helping churches to what we were calling renovation then, and did a lot of work in cast glass, actually large-scale cast glass. That was probably my very favorite thing to do. Did a lot of that in the 90s, some painting and such, but most of this was all liturgical arts. And I also worked with parishes as liturgist and, with music. Art and music are very related, obviously, and I also taught music and then ended up leading music in parishes I taught about 10 years and then did liturgical work about 10 years and pastoral work. And that really led me into working with immigrants, because in our part of Kentucky, immigrants started showing up when the state would finally said you can no longer take out your children from school a couple of weeks, spring and fall, to deal with tobacco planting and stripping. And so suddenly overnight we had farm workers, we had Hispanic farm workers, and I felt it would be, only just for us to learn to sing a little in Spanish, just so they would feel welcomed, and everything led from there. So that's I got into working with immigrants, and that has been really a delight. And I still have some of those aspects. I still play in a tiny church, has 14 pews out in the country here in Kentucky, and I still have a lot of interaction with immigrants who are my favorite local heroes. So, these things are not like really behind me, but they've all kind of shaded one into the other. It was learning Spanish that, it was being able to learn Spanish that led me into being part of a medical team in Honduras. That was the link, the missing link.
That led you to founding Water with Blessings and everything else.
Yeah, that led me to that experience. And I'm a problem solver, kind of to a crazy extent. I just hate to let something go until we figured it out. And that led me into the world of water. But I had much wiser and better prepared people around me.
Sister, I'm wondering, because you've certainly kept busy in the last 40 years and longer, you mentioned the contemplative charism of the Ursulines. I'm wondering how that has helped you with everything you've accomplished.
I think, first of all, being intentional about a contemplative life, being dedicated to regular prayer and meditation, and contemplative life is more about a contemplative relationship even with the Lord rather than just simply a practice of prayer. That's certainly part of it. But that has really nurtured, and it is the ground of my relationship with God. And without that, nothing else would truly be possible. That's what sustains me. And I think, too, has just helped me to be creative sometimes in certain situations. And it's hard to explain. But it is the ground of everything else.
Well, Sister Larraine, thank you so much for this fascinating conversation. I feel like we've really learned a lot. Subscribe to the Providence College podcast in all the usual places, including iTunes, SoundCloud, Stitcher, Google Play, and our newest platform, Spotify. If you like what you hear, please review and share with others. Thanks for listening, and go Friars.